The U.S. government's COVID-19 public health emergency officially ends May 11th. And now, more than 3 years after the pandemic began, we're starting to realize how the emergency had an impact on American society. So how has it affected us spiritually? A new poll finds 20% fewer American adults believe that they have a unique God-given calling or purpose in their life. The Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University study reveals before the pandemic, 66% embraced that view. Today, it's down to less than half of adults, 46%. Well, here with more is Pollster George Barna. George, it's always a pleasure talking with you, and this latest finding is troubling. You'd think with so many people locked down and shut in early on in this pandemic that they would have had more time praying, seeking God's purpose for their lives, but this seems like many people are just kind of giving up hope and direction. Is it because authorities shut down their churches? What's the reason?
Well, Gary, when we look at spirituality in America, one of the things that I've discovered over more than 40 years of studying this is that people's beliefs and religious behavior doesn't really change very much very often. And so the dramatic changes that we've seen during this short 3-year period of time are indicative of the fact that really the pandemic was a crisis. That's when people's beliefs change, when they're trying to figure out, oh my gosh, maybe I was wrong. How do things work? Who am I? How does life work better than what I'm experiencing now? And so it's really the only time that we see significant or dramatic spiritual change. And I think what's happened is that a lot of people have gone back and questioned some of the beliefs that they held at the start of the pandemic. Their entire life was thrown into confusion by all the government lockdowns and other, significant changes that were forced upon them. And there were a lot of other personal crises, whether they were health crises, financial issues that arose, family drama that came out of all of this, all kinds of things that really created pain in people's lives. That's when we change, when we're in pain.
Also, there was a significant change in the view of the sanctity of life. Tell us what you found there.
Yeah, well, when we looked at that, we found that people were 10 percentage points less likely after the pandemic to say that human life is sacred. It went from an already low 39% to an even lower 29%. So this is one of those things where, again, people are trying to redefine things to make sense of life. And one of the things that I think many people are concluding after the pandemic is, life can't be sacred. And look at what happened during the course of the pandemic. All the lives of people who died, many people who are debilitated for the rest of their life because of it. And so one of their defense mechanisms or one of their conclusions based upon all that is that, life isn't really sacred.
And fewer people described themselves as deeply committed to practicing their faith. Fewer are attending church. Tell us what you found, George. Why is this happening?
Well, in a time of crisis, many people turn to their faith. But what they found here was that A, churches weren't even open. B, communities of faith weren't meeting together. C, they had no place to turn to get real insight. At least that was their perception. So, many of them went to other options to try to get some kind of wisdom or guidance in the course of these crises that they were facing. And so much of it turned out not to be spiritual, certainly not biblical, if it was spiritual. And so that's created a lot of change in terms of not only our religious beliefs as a nation, but even our religious behaviors, where we see fewer people now reading the Bible, fewer people attending church services, fewer people acknowledging their sinfulness and asking God to forgive them. And so all of this has created a new kind of spirituality in America.
And I saw a new statistic that 1/3 of pastors say they'll retire by 2030. So overall, what do these findings foreshadow for the country's future? What needs to be done about it?
There are a lot of different ways I could answer that. One of those is when we look at the current body of pastors we have in America, most of them do not possess a biblical worldview. If we can bring in a new group of pastors who do possess a biblical worldview, that's going to be to the benefit of Americans and the church and certainly the kingdom of God.
Okay, Pollster George Barna, Director of Research at the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University. Thank you, George, for taking the time to share your latest findings. We always appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it.